team, another exciting episode of Journey with Michael and Ryan, and we have the beautiful Jessica Henrard in the hot seat. We have her to share all about her journey, all about her life, all about herself. She is the carnivore mummy on Instagram, a neuromuscular specialist, a meat eater, a Neuro Reset Technique practitioner, lives in the beautiful Mount Maunganui, loving all the sunshine. I see all your beach walks in the morning, all your grounding, all the good things. So welcome to the show. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy life.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here. And
awesome.
guys today.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
it's really good to have you here. As we were saying, the conversation was before about your little one jumping in.
Yeah.
So we'll just navigate that as we go, right?
Yeah, for sure.
100%. She pops in. That's life, that's how we go. Hey, one thing I am super really curious to ask you about, because I don't know a lot about it. And I've seen you speak about it before, your Neuro Reset Technique practice. I'd love for you to just open up with that, just because it's something quite unique. I haven't come across it with many people, or probably anyone else outside of you. So I'd love to open that up just to pique my own curiosity and learn a little bit more about all of the NRT aspect.
Yes. So NRT is Neuro Reset Technique, and I have been a specialist in it for about 12 years. I came across it in London on my journeys, and I had already been in health for a decade before coming across it. And basically kind of how I found it was I'm such a geek when it comes to health and human performance, just health in general. Bye, beautiful. Yeah, he's taking her to the playground. We got interruptions now. Fabulous. So I came across it because I was looking for better ways to help people. As a trainer in health and nutrition and that kind of thing, if someone came to me and they wanted to lose weight or put some muscle on, it was reasonably easy to achieve those things. But if someone had an injury, or there was stroke or cancer or post-op involved, or nerve damage or things like that, I try and modify an exercise. I try and, reduce the inflammation through dietary means to try and get that person some help. And if I couldn't, then I would send them to somebody else. And this might be another practitioner, of some sort, and they'd go over there. But what I kept seeing over and over was that people weren't getting better. People would often come back worse. Or it would take a really long time. They'd be going to physio or some kind of chiropractor or something for a really substantial period of time before you'd see an impact. And I was kind of thinking this is like the 2000s. Where's the high tech? Where's the hovercrafts? Where's the, teleportation? Where's the where's the human development? There must be something better that exists on this planet. And I was on a bit of a mission to just find something. And so I was really open to that. I did a ton of postgrad stuff, and I came across this really rare form of neuromuscular-based therapy called NRT by Simon Frost. So I was working in a private studio. I came across something else and met him through, it was kind of right time, right place type scenario. We got on really well. And he is an incredible human who has had essentially a scientific discovery where we can restore your muscle recruitment instantly. So if you have weakness, tightness, immobility, we can actually change that through the nervous system and brain instantly, straight away on the table. And so when I saw that, because I'd done all the things, I'd done all the specialty training after I thought I was so good at my job, and I had a really good job training trainers. It was my job to make them better, and I worked with guys that were had been in the military, and they were excellent, and I thought I was Miss B's knees. And I saw this and I went, oh my God, I know nothing about anything. It was incredibly humbling. And it's like walking out into the sea and knowing how deep the ocean is. It was that kind of holy moly.
For sure.
And just seeing the way that actually we can use our tissues if we have strengthened the pathways to them instantly.
So is it a physical like
Yeah, so
appointment of the muscle, or is it a meditation? Is it a hypno? Like,
no, we use the way we do it obviously is like very underground. You'll never see videos of the treatment itself. Being a scientific discovery, you can't patent it, like, you know, so it is hidden because there'd be like 1,000 knockoffs, not hidden, but you know. So it looks like a passive exercise therapy. So you'd be on the table here, we'd do some thorough assessment of your nervous system and your brain and your function, have a look at your body, where your tightness, inhibition issues are. But your body will actually show me where the weaknesses are. So there's a very thorough assessment protocol that we go through. And then we essentially test it. We find the weakness in the nervous system and the brain. We do some special treatment to do that and restore whatever receptor is weak. So basically think of it like a sense of self. We have a sense of ourselves as humans, and we have different sensory pathways, right? And these are all telling our brain about our current status of our body. Yep. And we think of three main ones. Like we've got receptors that tell us about where we are in space, what's our position. We've got ones that, as the tissue shortens, send information to our brain about where was I, where am I, and at what rate did I get there, i.e. movement. You've got receptors in your joint capsule. You've got it in the lengthening tissue. You've got skin, fascia, tendons, you know, like there's a ton of information coming into receptors all around our body at one time. And if there's an insufficient sense of that, you'll have a lack of control over that particular area of your body. And
so it's not so much like a manipulation of the muscle, the joint, the tendon, but you're actually working with the way in which the body, the brain, and the nervous system is able to pick up that information. So it's just like, it's like reconnecting the AUX cord so that I can actually hear sound in my microphone.
Bingo. So it's receptive feedback. It's that information in and the strength of that pathway and the amount of voltage in that. So, you know, and then essentially you're restoring function to someone's whatever part of their body is weak or whatever part of their sensory neural pathways have insufficient.
How would someone go about losing that sensory to begin with? Like, is it something we're born with? Have we gone through a traumatic response in the body? Like, how does this happen?
I asked the same thing because I was like, why am I weak? Why have I got insufficient of this area of my body? Because especially being like, not big-headed, but I thought that I'd learned quite a lot, you know.
You already got it all down. You were doing everything possible, right? Surely there can't be something that you've missed.
Kind of. And it was like, I was a bit like, how and why have we lost him? I will say that the important thing isn't why. It doesn't matter as long as we can restore cares. However, yes, there are different methods that we can lose that sense of self, and it can come from like a trauma to the site. So if we, you know, severing tissue, if there's damage to the site, but also like you were talking about, it could be developmental. So think of the way that we create our nervous system sense of control of itself, and think of a little baby when they're little and they're all closed and squished up, and then they start, you know, sending and receiving information through repetition of motion to get strong pathways so that then they're like, okay, not quite. All right, here we go. And we get control of ourselves, and that's gained through that repetition. So let's say you went from like crawling and you missed a stage of development. You went sitting straight to walking and you missed crawling. That's a ton of repetition of sense of control of the nervous system that you've missed. So it could come from a developmental lack. It could come through a trauma or an injury. And you kind of touched on it there, Mike, when you said about the trauma stuff, because NRT also can treat trauma. And that's been really new. So I've been doing this, as I said, 12 years. The mind part of it, I've only been doing since December. So this December will be 2 years. And holy moly, like that side of it is just a whole new world, because you can actually treat trauma and you can test to see where that trauma has wired itself into your nervous system. So it may be in your visual system, it might be in your auditory sense, it might be in, you know, like it can be, it's not just somatic, there's levels of receptive information coming in. And so I didn't really understand the mind stuff because I've done body work in RT, and I was like, oh, look, you know, you've got poor mobility, you can only flex to there. Okay, let's restore movement, joint function, strength. Boom, you can now have full control over that whole thing straight away. And I got a bit not cocky with it, but because you see it over and over and over and over again with every human you touch, it's not like something that worked sometimes or worked for some people. Like, you know, it's like it works on every nervous system and brain that I've touched. Perfect. So when people are like, oh, I've got a tennis elbow, or I've got a, you know, spinal cage, or I've got a, you know, I'm like, yeah. And I come across like casually, but it does restore strength, control, mobility, and function instantly to somebody.
Do you think the identity of I have has a big part to play in the aspect of immobility as well, or maybe the area there? Obviously, I have tennis elbow. I have this. I have this suffering. I have this connection, right? Like the connection of mind to create the actual thing, because maybe it's an idea that got given to them, or they heard it once and then now they actually have a traumatic response. It's all healed, but the actual trauma is still stuck within their body. So they create that incapacity throughout their life. So maybe the point could be actually becoming the interference of being like, there it is there, so you can get that instant miraculous healing, you know, like in the aspect, and then moving in from the mind aspect now that you're going into, it's like, oh, I understand there could be a connection and correlation there. Maybe that's why sometimes when I help people actually get some arm mobility back, they fucking cry or they scream or something like that, because there's a release of a trauma within their nervous structure as well.
Because we test, so looking, say, at a joint range or a muscle's ability to either shorten or lengthen, those are specific things. If I was looking for trauma, I would be biasing different things and looking at different things. So it's not like you treat those things in unison. They're treated, think of them like as levels. So it's not like you'd have a release of something because you're restoring, say, movement, right? We're working on your joint, knowing where you're going, the velocity and rate at which you're shortening and in what direction and that kind of thing. If I was then doing trauma, I would specifically test trauma. But I love your question so much, and no one's ever asked me this, and it's the same stuff that I ask, so I love that. But I was like, okay, let's say I've got a trauma in the shoulder. And we'll use an example of how trauma gets wired into the nervous system, because I didn't know this, and this was even with all my degrees and post-grad wah-wahs. I didn't know how trauma got wired up. So I found this piece interesting. But the way that it happens is dependent upon what happened when it happened, right? So let's say I'm in a car and I'm in a car accident, and as I'm driving that car, I smash my shoulder into the side of the door and I stuff my shoulder, right? And someone comes to me and they go, I've got a shoulder injury. Well, we have a look at it. What's the shortening like? What's the positional sense like? What's your force output production like? Okay, how's your movement sense? And if it's crap, we'll fix it. Okay, so your body will show me, sweet, we restore it, we retest it, and we can see the instant change in the nervous system. It no longer downregulates and has a weakness there. You're strong, solid. Yeah. However, let's say that when you were driving that vehicle, you also flipped the vehicle. Right? And so when you smashed up your shoulder. And so we have vestibular sense, which is essentially balance dynamics. So as we move, it's like a level. As the level tips side to side, the fluid goes down, it saturates the little ears and tells our brain like what direction we're going. So just think of it like balance. Okay, so now we can wire trauma into our vestibular system as well. And let's say when we were driving, someone flew through the windscreen. In our visual system, we've got trauma, and so you can store it in your ocular system, in your auditory, in your somatic sense, in the actual joint, in the muscle, as well as any receptor that was wired in at the same time that you did said thing.
Totally, it's very similar.
You don't get to pick where it goes, and you don't get to we don't get to choose these things, which is why it's freeing in a way, because it's nobody's fault where their traumas are or how they've been wired up. It just is.
So my partner had a concussion like 2.5 years ago, and it really affected her vestibular system. Even to this day, there are still aspects of it that are still affected, and you can see and understand where she moves into specific activities where she essentially gets re-traumatized through that. And you can see the dizziness and things like that. But contact care, have you ever heard of contact care before?
No.
So contact care is essentially working on very, very similar things, but it's actually working on like the fascia and working on like releasing the impact trauma or the remembrance of the trauma in the nervous system through that. And as you go through one of those sessions, it like sort of rewinds the experience out of your body. But just that aspect on the vestibular system and the way in which it sort of gets trapped in those different layers, it's like you can see it and understand it in so many different ways, right? And quite often in the way in which we look at injuries or impact or trauma in the Western aspect, we only ever look at the physical. You know, we only ever look at like, okay, my shoulder's sore, so I'll treat the shoulder. I won't treat everything else that happened beforehand, right? So it's like such a big thing to miss. And this is why people keep going back to the same injury, the repetitive like shoulder pain, sore elbows, things like that, because you're not working with like when the impact first happened. You know, what does your nervous system actually remember? You know, what state was I actually in? How did it actually affect me? You know, what fear was there during that car crash, and how can I release that?
Yeah. Yeah. So with the with what you just pointed on, with like, why is it being pulled back? Why are people reliving this? Why are, you know, people experiencing this thing, and why are they ending up with reoccurring degeneration of an area? So, for example, I could restore the shoulder muscles, joint, fascia, tendons, whatever, all the things that are weak, find them weak, strengthen them. However, we have something called an interconnecting neuron. So imagine that connection to the brain. If I have trauma attached to that by an interconnecting neuron sending low-level down-sending signals to that, still say it's not okay, the somatic side will actually re-weaken. So we do literally make ourselves weak through that experience. So if you don't clear out the injury, as well as, like you said, the connection to the injury, then you will eventually end up weak in that area again, for sure.
100%.
It's quite amazing, because what I love about NRT, what I loved about NRT right from the beginning is you can assess. I don't have to work it out. It now goes out the trying to work out what is right for each person, and like, you know, because there was a ton of assumptions involved in my job, like right from however long I've been doing it, you'd always be trying to piece together what to do to make this person the best for them, but their bodies actually now give me that answer. So if there's a weakness in, if they have trauma there, if they and it isn't just a like, oh, I think I do. It's like we can actually see that through a physical response in your body, and then we can see it change. And I love that, because you can see your work. It's like getting to check your work at the end. It's like a cheat sheet. You can make sure you've done a good job. You can make sure you've done what you think you've done and had the effect that you think you've had, and people can see the instant change. And I just have never seen anything like that in my life.
Yeah, it sounds super empowering, right? Helping people see and feel like in every aspect. You know, we talk about lots of different things on this podcast, and the various aspects of facilitation that Ryan and I do and all that. And what I think we all have in common in whatever aspect that we do, it's helping people just turn a light on to seeing something in a different way, right? To feeling in a different way, because it's moving out of the known, even if it's pain, it's still known. We still want to hold on to it, right? It's like, this is mine. I know this. This feels normal to me. And so when you turn the light on, you show them a different aspect, and something like NRT that you do, it can be quite instant for people, obviously by the sounds of things there. And so someone can go, actually, I can be different, you know, and it gives them, it's kind of like more of an uplifting of their own power. You're helping them take their own power back. It's helping them go, yeah, I can be a different way. I don't have to be. We are just makeups of our own thoughts, processes, traumas, experiences, our realities, our confines that we're all in. And so with the beautiful work that you're doing, we're all doing, it's just like, hey, turn that light on. Yeah, that's a little different. I feel a little different. Oh, great. You know, and the more instant that we can do it in this day and age through different modalities, the more, you know, the faster people can go, yeah, I get it. Because everybody's awareness is fucked now. They're not on the long train to being like, hey, look, I'm going to do something for 6 months and then I'll get a result. It's like, nah, people want it now, right? And then the magic in all of us as healers is that there can be spontaneous healing. as long as the person truly has faith and believes that it can happen, the body can instantaneously heal, through the breath, through movement, through all the ideology, through the nervous system that you're understanding, and you come at it through such a beautiful scientific point of view where people can go, yeah, I understand that and that. I don't understand the words that you're saying, but I understand that you've gone and studied and trained for that, so I have more trust in you to be able to do it. I reckon if you wore a white lab coat, you'd probably get people to drop in even more as well.
Oh my God, that's so funny, because I'm very much like super connected to source, super connected to, like, I do a lot of that, and I have done a lot of that, and that was part of my journey as well. So when I came across this and it was so sciencey, I was a bit like, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to learn this, because I'm a clever girl, but Jesus, like, learning 1,600 divisions of tissue from here to here and how to reset them all. And, I was like, I'm never going to be able to learn this. Like, it's so in depth. And then it is ever evolving, like I said, with the new trauma pieces, and we just got all new respiration and core work. And it's just like, I study every single week for NRT. I have online NRT with the founder, Simon Frost, every Wednesday for just, forever. Like, because I need to keep, it's just the amount.
You evolve as it evolves, and it means that you can help people in a deeper way. So how does that NRT aspect tie into the rest of the work that you do with people and the way in which you show up?
It's everything, because it's really helping people relearn themselves. Because when I'm restoring function, they're essentially relearning sense of themselves and therefore control over themselves in lots of different ways. And so if your nervous system, for example, is struggling, if you're in a dysregulated state or even in defensive states, then none of your other systems work well. So you can't digest, you'll have skin issues, gut issues, respiratory, all sorts of different problems that will occur because you're dysregulated. So even if you're putting in all the right food and you're doing the right thing at bedtime, and you're doing your nighttime routines, and you've got your blue blockers and you've got all your, grounding sheets and your infrared, and you're doing all the things that you want to, that you think are health hacks, right? It's like you're doing all the things. However, if your nervous system is dysregulated or not in a good way, then it doesn't matter if you're putting in all those right inputs, because if your nervous system isn't receiving them, then it doesn't work. And so everything is based upon someone's current status. So like, where are you today, Mike? And where are you today, Ryan? Like, and we test that, and I teach people how to do that in real time so that they can test themselves through the day. So I get them to check it when they wake up, before they eat, before they exercise, before they go to sleep, and anytime they're dysregulated. And you can actually in real time just see, where is my nervous system at, and what do I need to do to make myself regulated? Because there's two defensive states, right? You've got fight, flight, freeze, like broadly, which everyone's heard of, these different defensive states. But depending on which state we're in will depend on what action we need to take to regulate ourselves. So I love and do breath work. I love and do high intensity interval training. I love and do like different things that regulate myself. However, it's knowing when to do what piece. Okay? Because if you're already in a sympathetic stimulated state, fight or flight, and you go and exercise, you're going to go further into that defensive state. Or if you're in a dorsal state and you're through the floor and you're low and da-da-da, and you go and do breath work, it can take you further dorsal depending on the type of breath you're doing, etc. Right? But I'm just talking broadly. And so you can either take yourself further into those defensive states, or you can pull yourself out of them. And if you don't know where you are, how do you know which one to do? And then what do you eat? And when do you eat? And if you eat when you're dysregulated, are you even going to absorb even though you're eating all the right thing? Like there's levels to health, man. Like people think it's just like, oh, just go to the gym 5 days a week and eat healthy. It's like, no.
Well, it's like a reductionist model, realistically, right? We're a complex system, and we work in so many different ways, and it's not just, as you say, pulling one lever and expecting everything to flow through you. It's about understanding when to pull a lever at a specific time, and everyone's is completely unique. We look at it in naturopathy, everyone has their own bio-individuality, so it's not actually, you're not actually treating a symptom, you're treating a person, understanding their circumstances, their wants, their needs, desires right now in this moment, understanding their past stories, what they're actually pursuing, not just looking at like optimization of a specific thing to help them You know, there's so many subtle nuances to it.
Yes. Yeah. And like it makes such a big impact on our health, our day-to-day life, how I walk through my day, how I show up for my kids, what I do for my clients. Like it affects everything. So I'm always constantly checking in with my nervous system, although I've got a very good handle on myself because I've been essentially testing myself and treating and strengthening myself for 12 years. And, you know, even we treat the vagus nerve, and we treat that at a non-conscious level, and we treat all the different pieces of that, and that gives you such a bigger capacity to not then go into these defensive states because you've got a really robust, strong nervous system. And I love helping people transform their health, their lives, what they think is capable. Like, oh, it's the best job. I have the best job in the world. Like, totally. I absolutely love it. I love helping people that have been trying really desperately to heal themselves or help themselves, and they've done all the things and they're frustrated and they're hopeless, and they're like, oh my God, Jess, like, and people are also quite skeptical because they haven't heard of it. What is it? How does it work? It sounds good. That makes sense. But like, what are you actually going to do to me? Like, people don't know what it is.
For sure.
So I can appreciate. I was in the same thing. And as you start to understand the level of the nervous system and what it governs and how it can affect us and how instantly it can change our lives. Yeah, it's like having a job where the instant gratification is on steroids big time, because I get to do that in real time with people and have huge, crazy results. Like you're talking about the vestibular system before. I had this lovely old gentleman fly in to see me from Switzerland. And he just, when he went to tie his shoes, he would just topple over, you know, whatever direction he was going. His vestibular system was completely weak. He had no idea where he was in space. And we treated it and did all of the different parts of all the different anterior vertical canals and all the different pieces of his vestibular system. And by the end of the hour, he could stand with one foot in front of the other with his eyes closed, fully balanced and stable. Like,
amazing. I'm coming for a session.
Good job. That's the beauty of having a podcast. We get all these incredible people on, so we get to come and try on all these incredible healing modalities.
Yeah,
it's totally coming down.
You know, you said your partner, and I feel for your partner.
She's coming. She's coming.
You know, I had a client in New Zealand, so I did all my specialty training in London. That's what kept me there. I was in London 13 years, and obviously I still go back and I'm still doing online stuff, but that's the primary reason that I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be at the head of this, because this is the future of health and fitness. People don't even know it exists, and it's changed the world. So I'm like, I wanted to be like at the front of it. And there was an old client in Tauranga that I worked with, and you know, she lost 20 plus kilos, looks amazing, had changed her life. And that was before I even had NRT. So that was like old school Jessica's work. And then she had followed me on social media. And when I flew back into the country, she was like, do you think you can help my daughter? So her daughter had basically had a head injury where she jumped up into a glass window, well, glass ceiling something, and had chronic pain, chronic migraines, headaches, brain fog. She was on antidepressants, painkillers, had been at the pain clinic at the Tauranga Hospital, like just miserable, was starting not to be able to go to work, relationship issues, you know, everything just started. You know, and she's 21, bless her. And she had this head injury when she was 15 years old. So she'd had it for 6 years. And she just thought, they just told her that that's it. She has to just learn to manage her symptoms, her pain, her you know, her agony. And she's 21. So my client contacted me and she said, hey, could you think you could help her? And I said, yeah, bring her along. We'll do a session. And we did 2 or 3 sessions. And she had 0 headaches, 0 migraines, 0 pain, 0 brain fog, off her antidepressants, lost a ton of weight, like just, and it was really that easy. And like, it was hard for her because there was a lot wound into all of that.
Totally.
It was, her problems were mainly, and I find this with a lot of head injuries, it is vestibular system, it is ocular, so the data coming into our visual system, and cervical spine. When the cervical spine locks up below, you know, and once you find the weakness and you test on the person and you go, okay, this is what we need to do. Because people are like, well, how many sessions? I'm like, I don't know. I have to have a look at your nervous system and see where your weaknesses are. you also can see which is worse, because sometimes you'll have, like, let's say I get someone on the table and I assess all of them. They might have 100 things and people are like, oh my God, I'm a mess. But there may be huge, big issues that are creating the little ones. So once you tackle the big stuff, a lot of the other little things are just side effects to those issues.
Totally.
Doing the weeding, cutting the branches.
What do you think is, because obviously you when it comes to the nervous system, you obviously have an extremely wide and deep grasp on the understanding of it. How do you think the impact that people are living at the moment is having on their nervous system? And how long do you think we can actually survive in the state we are living at the moment?
Don't ask me that.
Next week.
I mean, like,
Bring your radical view. Let's go.
To be honest, in the last 3 years, okay, what we had seen, or what we have seen as practitioners, there's 25 of us in the world. That's it. 25 of us globally, in the whole world. Which is why, you haven't heard of it and da-da-da. But what we all were seeing and presenting over the last 3 years is that people are in full freeze state. So they're not just going into fight or flight defensive, they are full shut down head to toe.
Interesting. Do you think that has a lot to do with everyone being locked up for an extended period of time, like literally frozen in place for 2 years, and then told to go out and just reactivate and be back in the world?
And see that everything you got told was a lie, and now you have to either believe that lie, or you've got to see something and understand that the shackles of the society around you are not truth, right? And so,
it's a brutal awakening, like you say. And when I asked Simon, I'm forever asking questions and always learning more. And I was like, why are we seeing these people with just an absolute state? And on the table, what that would look like is just floppy, like no contraction control through the tissues, like just, in full flop, full freeze, and the defensive state being, I'm going to die, because that's what freeze is. It's like, oh my God, this is life-threatening, I'm going to die. So how he explained it to me was basically, if you imagine that fight or flight being our sympathetic state and being, okay, we've got to fight something, or I've got to haul ass and run away from said threat, yeah? When that happens, heaps of stuff happens in terms of our physiology. So our heart rate will increase, our blood pressure increases, we release a whole different set of hormones and stuff because we need to be able to run or fight, yeah? So what is happening is we're going up into this fight or flight state, we're releasing these hormones, we perceive something to be a threat. And I want you to imagine it like you're in the Sahara and you see some kind of, mountain lion or something. And then you're releasing all of those hormones, right? You're like, oh my God, I've got to run or fight. And then it's a mirage and it just disappears and there's no visible enemy. That is what's going on in the world. So we want to fight and we want to run away, but there's no actual entity to direct that at. And so what happens is we've released all these hormones. I've had all the systemic response. If I'm going unsympathetic, I've got to fight. And then there being nothing there. And what that does is slingshots us down into our freeze state. And then we're stuck in freeze. And that's what I'm seeing. And that's what we've seen on humans and their nervous systems over the last 3 years chronically, because we want to be able to fight or run away, and there isn't that ability. And so we are stuck in freeze states and, oh my God, I'm going to die. And that feeling and response non-consciously of I'm going to die and what to do. Like, people don't even know they're there. So
there's a great saying that's from it's not from our teachers, but our teachers pass it on. It's, first we die, then we stop, then we get sick, then we stop breathing, right? And for most people walking around, they're already dead. They've died. We're just walking zombies. The shutdown, the fawn response is just there. It's just nothingness. There's numbing, right? And then there's no reaction to life that's going around. And so you're saying about the floppy. It's like the afraid of death. It's like, well, everyone's actually addicted to death. It's like that's happening, and they send themselves to the grave.
Yeah, and you see it, like, people are chronically sick. Like, I'm
just getting sicker and more extreme.
And it just like the acceptance of it is fucking crazy to me.
Mm.
I'm running a couple of different online programs, and one of them is a sugar stopper program, and it's about just learning to step away from sugar and how to curb your addictions. And like just that awareness for some people, even though they know at a cellular level that this thing is killing them, and they still do it, like they still do it, and they're still walking themselves into the grave, so to speak, or you know, having full wear. And I did some stats for them the other day on one of the calls, and it was like in the 80s we had chronic, for children as well, chronic illness was at like 10 to 12% max in the 80s, and then fast forward to today it's at like 52%.
Yeah, yep. Insane. 1 in every 2 children is sick.
Yep.
And most of them potentially even born that way as well, you know.
Yeah. I mean, most of my daughters, when I took my daughter to school at one point, you know, when she was like 5 or 6, and more than half of her kids in her age, I will outlive, and they're pre-diabetic at 6. It is scary. It's really hard, that whole side of seeing the sickness that exists, and also even just seeing people really trying to help themselves. So I see people with the infrared machines, and I'm like, great, that's great if your nervous system can tolerate that pathway and stimuli, and you can test it. And I show people, I've got an infrared machine, and we test them, and then we can see what the light's doing. And it's like, it just doesn't, things don't just do what you think they do because you want them to. Like, you have to have it, you know, and I feel sad for the people that are trying to ice bath and breath work and infrared and because they're missing a fundamental piece, that if their nervous system doesn't have capacity, then none of those things are actually good for you. Me, I have a really bad thing. My nervous system does not like the cold. And of course, me wanting to be optimal, I was like, okay, how do I treat my thermoregulation? Like, how do I treat these pieces? And you can, but it's really painful and a slow process. Not painful as in like hurts, but it's a slow process of doing it. And I was like, I don't want to do it that bad. Like,
Well, because I suppose you've got to realize and understand that like people's nervous system will be set in a specific way. And so it's like what's regular for me will be different to what's regular to Mike. So it's like the things that take me from like dorsal to vagal and vagal to dorsal would be completely different. And I guess it's for you, the work you're doing is actually educating people on what the tools are and educating themselves so they can understand what to use when.
Yeah. And that's empowering. That's like knowing that when I use this infrared machine, it's actually going to increase my mitochondrial function, and it's going to do all the cellular regeneration that I want it to do, right? I've spent all this money getting this bloody infrared machine. I want it to have a positive impact.
Yeah.
And so I want to help people supercharge what they're already doing, not just the people that are really, really screwed up. Like, I like a bit of both.
What do you think is like a free way to start stepping into people's self-regulation? You know, if they don't have the money to spend on the infrared or the coaches or all of that, like where's a really, really blanket approach that everybody could go, yeah, I want to start stepping into a little bit more of my own health and wellness. Where can they start? Where can we go?
Basic free things, like top few, is morning light. Like sunlight before artificial light is so important on so many levels, nervous system as well as circadian, as well as hormonal, as well as blah, 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 right?
So what does that look like? So
that means I roll out of bed in the morning, I see nothing. I don't look at, you know, the light on the device in the hallway, or I walk, if I'm up before, I have my blue blockers on, otherwise I'm straight outside. I drive to the beach, which is 5 minutes away from me, and I go straight to the ocean and watch the sunrise before any artificial light is in my eyes. And that means as I'm driving around the plaza, I put my red light glasses on as I'm driving through to the beach. I go all the way down to the beach, and then I take them off because the bloody surf club's all lit up. And I'm like, no, because that is super important. It tells our brain so many pieces of information that are vital for body fat, for nervous system function, for brain, for, you just get morning light. Artificial light is awful. Like you going to a gym at 5 a.m. is the worst thing that you can do for your nervous system. It is, so that's a really easy one. Second one, get lots of gamma rays. So you want 2 hours of UV and gamma rays during the day. So get in the sun and on the earth during the day. That's also going to regulate your nervous system. Feet on the ground, either grass, or if you're at the beach, make sure it's in the sea. because if you're on the dry sand, you won't ground. It needs to be wet. So that's super easy. Grounding, sunlight, massive regulators, massively free, multiple benefits. And then same at night. So you want to watch the sun go down, just that 5 minutes of that change of it going from light to dark. And then I go into blue blockers. And that's just the light glasses. And I have different red light pieces around my house as well. But that's free, that's easy, that's simple. And, you know, you can coordinate meditation into that easily. You can coordinate breath work into that. If you don't just want to stand at the beach, you can power walk down that, stomp it out in the sea. Like this, take you whatever. I do my beach sprints down there every morning. I just mark out 40 meters and then I just sprint back and forward, you know, like whatever feels good. And if you are feeling defensive or like, because obviously I can sense it and it's easy for me to know straight away if I'm going into a slightly dysregulated state, but it's harder for people not to have that awareness. So if you're feeling defensive or tight or you have an awareness, don't exercise. Like calm, try and regulate yourself and then see, because the same thing, you don't want to be taking yourself more sympathetic. The other thing that can happen is we can slingshot ourselves from different defensive states, and you don't want to be doing that either. Ideally, we want like calm. So that's a good way. It's just like morning light, daylight, grounding, earthing, and some really basic ways to do that.
What about for somebody who starts work at 6 a.m. and they finish work at 6 p.m. in the wintertime? You know, because I feel like it's easy for you know, us to be like, just do this, get 2 hours of sunlight, get grounding, get in. But for the people that actually need a little bit more regulation are the ones that are kind of like stuck in these loops, right? They're working 12 hours a day. You know, they've got 3 kids on the go. They're on minimum wage. You know, they're trying to do all these things. And, you know, so what's potentially like even a step below that to even just start if you've got all these things going on in life, right? Because that's why you're so dysregulated. You're creating the chaos in your reality because you're chaotic inside.
Yeah. Just even like one of my guys, some similar situation, early, like like he's up. But even if he sticks his head out the window and just looks up to the sky and counts to 60, cool. That's minimum. So that he's getting some of that morning light into his eyes. He's kicking off his cortisol response, which is meant to come up gradually. It's going to affect his, you know, how everything works for the rest of the day, including his sleep and his regeneration and his detoxification in the following evening, because our morning sets us up for our night and so on and so forth. Like there's so many pieces to it. But yeah, if it is just like out the window, a crack and staring and counting, and then putting things like these on your phone, like these are free as well. So you can have like, see how it's red?
Cool.
Yeah. So I've set that up on my phone so that I can set it to red. So stuff like that, so that if in the morning you are up before the light, then you can have these red things. What that does is basically think of it like what we're getting information in from the light is to start off different hormonal responses that are really important for us. If we get artificial light in our face, it's telling your brain that it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon at 6 a.m. or whatever time it is that you are stimulating yourself. And so just that, like, okay, right, morning light, kicking off that cortisol. And sometimes I have like counted to 60 when I've been really limited, you know, but if you can roll outside for 5 minutes and at the same time, you know, put your feet on the ground and look at the amazing, like whatever it looks like to you, like you said, it needs to be doable and achievable. And that will change things. And that I've had people with chronic insomnia just do that. And he was actually in a hospital where he was under all the artificial light and there's the beeping and it's the worst place to heal, right? And I just said to him, right, I like blue blockers. He took his blue blockers to hospital. He had his grounding mat. So we have things like this. This is a grounding mat. He had a grounding sheet in hospital and the crack that he could get in the window, you know, he would do that and then he'd be in his blue blockers. Like, you know,
actual health, actual healing, right?
That's it. But it's so simple that it's your answer was to just be in nature more.
In nature,
Like that's it. Like people try to overcomplicate health, and they try to optimize it to the nth degree. But if you're missing out on these very, very small things that are actually about slowing down, being in nature, exposing ourselves to what is natural and true, and moving away from the constant stimulation of devices and televisions and the overhead lights that we have in our houses and work, and you know, the artificial air that we're breathing every day as well, you know, to just remember, like, the best place to start is reconnecting with nature, you know, spending time outside. It's simple, realistically, right?
I totally agree with that. And there's so many parts of being in nature that are healing as well. And play is a big one too. Like, play is a huge stimulation. So, like, think about us as animals, right? Just imagine we're lions, you know, we would have woken up with the sun rise, and we would have, you know, moved our bodies however kind of felt good and right. We might scuffle around and play a bit, and then we might be like, okay, let's go and find some food, and then, you know, we might have a nap. Like, we're meant to be. We're very close to that. That's the life that we want to be living, is play and cycles of just flow and outside. Like, we were not meant to live inside. The air pollution inside is 5 times more toxic than outside. Like, and children's rooms have the worst levels of toxicity. I'm always like, open your windows in the morning. All the windows are opening. They know they are not turning any lights on. That's like, have you had your morning light? Like, I'm the light Nazi.
The light Nazi. That's the UV queen.
Honestly, we don't need to get in the fridge.
We the responsibility thing, because you know, this is a question. But let me here's the question as well. Like, do you think the fear of the thing actually create more resistance in yourself of the actual thing? The fear of the fake light before I get real light. Like, is that not creating like some structure with your nervous system a bit dysregulated? The fridge, light.
Yeah. A trauma issue. So, for example, the she's not in London, she's in Costa Rica now because she's just moved there. But she was struggling with her treatment, and she was like doing heaps of stuff on herself, and she's the only person in Costa Rica obviously that does NLT, so she can't have someone test her individually, and testing yourself going to be a little bit trickier than anyway. She wired in a whole heap of trauma into what she was thinking about her treatment, so that when they then tested her nervous system, she had wired up trauma around treatment for NRT.
Yeah.
So you can wire absolutely anything into a defensive state, be it a thought that you have in your head, be it a scenario or experience, be it me being freaked out about the light. But the cool thing is I can actually test it. So I can go, okay, let's use your processing recall memory. Okay, let's think about how you've experienced that light, and then we can test your nervous system and see, am I actually creating a downregulation by having a fear of that thing? And I can test it. And that's the cool thing, because everything in my thing, people go, oh, Jess, And I'm like, test it, because you can test. So we can see what exactly you find a threat, or you find, you know, what have you wired up, and then treat it.
Easy.
Which is cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's a practical way to add uniqueness and individualities to someone's health and healing process, instead of it being like, no, this is the list of things you have to do. It's like, well, no, these are the things that actually work for your nervous system in this specific moment, and the best thing is you can test it to see if it actually works for you.
Yeah. And then once it's restored, so let's say it's elbow flexion, let's use a muscle because it's easy to kind of get your grasp around, but let's say you have an inability of shortening contraction through this tissue, and we restore function to that area, and now you can, right? And you can see it straight away, not only in your range of motion, which will improve, but how much force you can generate and range of motion. And we can test it and see that that's no longer a problem, a weakness, it's strong. We can then test that 6 months later, 2 years later, 5 years later, 10 years later, and you'll still have strength and control over that area. This isn't something that's temporary. It's not a temporary change to the nervous system. So when we test something and treat it, it's not like, oh yeah, this should work for you. We know straight away, okay, we fixed that issue. We can see that it no longer has a problem in you. And then when we test it, however long down the line, it will still be strong. As long as you still continue to use that area of your body, which I'm going to obviously use for range of motion in my elbow flexion, I want control over that area of tissue.
Wow, that's amazing, because I mean, there's so many things that I've gone to. Like, I've gone to a naturopath for many years, since I was 7, just because of concussions and things. And osteopaths, not naturopaths.
Oh yeah.
But it's like, I've worked with so many, but they've just never been able to keep it like unstuck. Like it always just goes back to you know, what my body's known for so long. Like it'll be okay for a little bit, and then it will just come back, and I can slowly feel it starting to come back, and then I know I just have to go get another session, and it's like a 6-month repetitive thing. And I know if I don't do it, if I let it build up for a year, then my ability to self-regulate it becomes even harder. You know, so the beauty with what you're saying is, like, you know, you can work with someone once, twice, 3 times, and because you've made that reconnection, you know, the mic's fully clicked in, you don't have to do it again, which is beautiful.
It's so cool, because you actually get to help people with the core of their problem, of their weakness, and restore it, and then you get to see it last. And often you'll have more sense, control, and strength and mobility on the side that you've treated, and then the side will be like, hey, make me better. Like,
yeah, for sure.
No problem over here. But it's like, you know, when you compare to a fully functional elbow flexion, you know, then you start to want it. Like, it changes the tone in your tissue instantly. The way that the muscle stuff changes straight away. So when he first did one of my legs, he did my quad, and I stood up, and it just held itself like this, and this other one was all like, and I was like, do my other leg immediately, like, oh my God. But also do my triceps and do my ass, and like, you want thing to be able to recruit, to be strong, to be mobile, i.e. functional, and to, you know, to be able to still do the things that I want to do. I'm getting healthier with my children. I've got 3 little girls, full on. I am down on the floor. I am up in the tree. I am doing all the things. I am running and sprinting, and I beat my daughter still. She's about to turn 12. I'm still faster than her. Like,
nice.
Like, quite a bit faster than her lately, because I've been working on my sprint speeds. But, you know, like, I want to be able to do the things I do, and I don't want to think of age as a reason for immobility or pain or stiffness or tightness, because those are all just symptoms of a weak nervous system. If you're tight, you're defensively tight. You shouldn't go foam rolling and stretching and manipulating something that is tight for a reason, and it's a defensive reason.
Beautiful.
And so we don't want to start manipulating and pulling things apart, because they are structurally trying to hold more stability.
Together, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, we are aware of your time. I know you're a busy lady and you've got clients back to back today. So I think that's a beautiful place to wrap up. You've convinced me to come and have a session. I'm sure Ryan and his beautiful wife will come and do the same thing. And we'll come and regulate our nervous systems with you.
Yay, that'd be so good. You're going to go like, what on earth, Jess? We should.
I'm looking forward to it. I love it. I love the weird and wacky and whiny, and I always find the good practitioners. So, you know, we've found you today. It's great.
Perfect. Exactly.
So, and I love the questions. Like, some questions I've never had before about, you know, I'll tell you that. It's the same way that my brain goes into like, oh, how and why and what. And so, yes, hit me up with any other questions. I'd be happy to join you again sometime.
We will put all your details. Actually, just before we finish, where can everyone find you?
So I've got 2 Instagram pages, which is at the Carnivore Mummy, and the Jessica treatment is the nervous system side / sleep, stress, food, nutrition, all the other pieces of the pie.
Cool. I'll put them all in the show notes so everybody can come find you. And just thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy week. We always love sitting and talking to people. I've learned a lot today. I know Ryan probably has as well. So thank you.
Thank you. It was so nice to hang.
All right, thanks so much, Jeff.
Okay.
Thanks, team, for listening. We'll see you all next week.